Let's get started again now. I'm going to go through some tips and tricks and notes and checklist stuff regarding proper educated filing. Many of you will have seen some of this stuff, but in the course of just reciting through it, I'll probably add some things that'll be helpful and that'll provide an opportunity for questions to come up about this as these things as well. So I think it'll be useful for everyone. But before I begin, I'd like to ask, how many people in here have filed educated returns? Pretty nearly everybody. How many people have had victories?
I'm kind of on the fence on that.
Yeah.
Why are you on the fence?
The state accepted for 4 years, and then they came back with 25,000 in FRPs. And
Okay, so you won 4 times, and now you're getting
now
some nonsense trying to herd you to reverse yourself.
Right. And then the IRS immediately hit FRPs, and then they came back with 215 saying 0.
Okay, so you've definitely had victories.
Yeah.
Don't think you didn't. Don't think for a second that you didn't. And we had a lot of other hands up there as well, and that's great. How many of you have sent in videos, or made videos, posted videos about your, just 2 people? This is part of being the storm, too. You know, I mean, really, you know, I asked you guys to come here. I don't know what you thought this was going to be about, but this is for me to harangue you and harass you and browbeat you and give you a bad time.
I got a tax agency doing that already.
You do, but you know, but in my case, it's lovingly done. And you got to do those videos. How many of you? Let me ask this question a different way. How many of you have watched somebody else's video, some CTC educated testimonial video? Most everybody has seen those. Did you find it inspiring or useful? Did you see how? Did you see what good it would do for other people to see that, you know, we're not CTC educated, but how much good it would do? And that, whether it be one where somebody's showing victories or talking about victories or not talking about victories, but just talking about their spirit and why they're in the field, why they're there. Would everyone agree that those videos communicate that?
Yes.
Okay, so where are yours? Speak to the world. You got to be the change that you want to see. You have to lead by example. You've got to, you know, you got to be all in. That really is the message here. That's the real message of this seminar. You got to be all in. This is not something that can be done in a drive-by manner or from the shadows or whatever. You know, I started out this talk explaining about how your understanding of the law is correct. The understanding of the law that you got from studying CTC is correct. And you got to know that. I told you, you got to know that in your heart. You got to know it, you know, be confident in it. And the way to make yourself know that you know, to make yourself know that you're confident in your knowledge, which is absolutely critical, both for communicating it to other people and for defending yourself if you end up needing to do that. You have to know that. The way to know and to make yourself confident is to be all in. And that means to stand up and show your face. You got to stand up and show your face. You got to tell people. You have to tell other people. Any of you have religious faith? Anybody here? What? Would you hesitate for a moment to explain your faith, to preach your faith to a neighbor, to any? Not for a second. Why on earth would you cover your candle with a bushel about this? This is the truth. This is our American kind of religious truth. This is what we believe. This is what our country is structured on. And without these structures, if these things get eroded, our country collapses. We've all seen the teetering, at least, that's going on right now because the underpinning of our American structure of law is being eroded. It's being eaten away by its enemies. And it falls to us to shore it up, to patch it up. Yeah.
May I make a comment?
Please.
I as you may have alluded to, came to CTC from various other had started filing educator returns in 2015. However, I have yet to receive victory, and my current fight is a potential tax court issue.
Mm-hmm.
So that makes me, I appreciate your inspiration, but it still makes me hesitant to post a video.
And let me respond to you. You have had a victory. You're here right now. You have learned truth. And you said you filed an educated return in 2015?
15, 16, 17.
Is that not a victory, people? Is that not a victory is that not the American resolution? That is a resolution victory. You learned the truth and you acted on it, and you did it in the face of, this most fearsome agency in America, That's a victory. And that's all that I ask for in a video. I don't ask for you to be able to hold up checks and show them. It's nice to be able to do that. It's nice, but I don't ask that at all. I say, tell people why you're there, why you're in the field. Why are you fighting this battle? What is it that motivates you to get up and fight this fight? It's tax. Bad word to use. It's a very taxing fight. It requires a lot of resources. It requires a lot of energy. If nothing else, you're going to spend a ton of money on certified letter, mailings and things like that. Which I think is half the reason why there's any resistance to CTC at all. They know that people are going to spend $40 on postage, and that's money that goes into their bank. So, But no, you've had victory. You've had victories, absolutely. Just as you've had victories, Jim. All of those were victories. The fact that they later came back and said, "Oh, geez, we had no idea what we were doing. We've been doing this continuously for the last, however many years up to the time at which this happened for you. What was this, within the last couple of years? Okay, so we've been doing this for 10 years, but we just now figured out that we were wrong in your case. We just now figured it out. So, we want the money back, please." Or those were all frivolous or whatever. I'm on tape, so I don't want to use the expression. It's nonsense. It's all nonsense. You won the victories. They're just trying to make you think you didn't by sending stuff later saying, oops, or, well, really your filings were wrong. It's baloney. All of it is baloney. You had victories. You had nothing but victories. And do those videos. They matter. I started a little while ago. I was asking the question, how many have seen those videos and found them to be inspiring? You all did. You all have seen them, and you all have found them to be inspiring. You all know that they are. So do yours. Do your own. Be all in. Recognize, have the confidence to say, you know what? There's nothing to hide from here. Let them hide from me. I'm the storm. I am the storm. I want to be what they can't withstand because they're wrong and I'm right. And they're doing wrong and I'm going to do right. You got to do that. This is serious. This is not, when you leave here today, this can't just be, something that goes away because, that was cool, and then, on to other things. This is serious business. This, the business of the tax, this determines whether you own your own labor or you don't own your labor. You understand that distinction? If they can, if the state can come and take the product of your labor away from you, it's the same as making you go out and work in their fields. It's exactly the same, philosophically as well as economically. It's exactly the same.
Slavery.
It is slavery. That's exactly what it is. And you are either going to be slaves or you're not going to be slaves. And your kids are going to be slaves or they're not going to be slaves. Which is it going to be? They're going to be slaves if you don't step up above the, put your face above the trench wall and start being the storm. And I mean, really, this should be something that occupies you all the time. Because, it occupies them all the time. They're constantly trying to enslave you and enslave your kids. And you got to fight. Freedom is not free. That's one of those, kind of silly taglines. It's like a bumper sticker line, but it's the absolute truth. Tom Paine said it better. He said, "God knows how to put a price on heaven's goods, and it's no surprise that liberty should bear a pretty high one." That's a fact. this is more important than other things in your life, whatever they may be. It really is. This has enduring importance, and all you need to do is, talk into your cell phone for 3-4 minutes and explain yourself a little bit. Think about it a little. Get yourself in the mood. Think about it a little bit first, and then explain yourself to your cell phone for 3.5 minutes or 4 minutes. That's all you have to do. This is not difficult. It's not challenging. I know everybody has a tendency to think, well, geez, I'm not a public speaker, or I'm not, the thing that is not acceptable at all to think is, well, I don't like my face being out there. Your face has got to be out there. You got to be the guy that stands up in the town meeting and says, wait a second, no, to the people who are advocating for the violation of liberties and the erosion of the rule of law. You got to be the guy that stands up and says that. You got to be the guy in The Patriot. Everybody's seen the movie The Patriot, where they're having the town meeting and they're asking for people to go out and go into the fields and stand against the British, and nobody wants to begin with. Nobody says a word, until finally one guy says, kind of looks at his neighbors, well, I'm going. And after that one guy does, then another one does, and then 3 more do, and then 8 more do, and after a little while, you've got a cadre of people out there, and the Swamp Fox is out there doing his thing against the Brits, who were otherwise burning down his neighbors' houses. You got to be the guy that stands up in the town hall, and making these videos and anything else that you can think of to do of the same sort. That's just part of that. So, anyway. So seriously, do that, okay? I expect to see videos from you guys. I do. As I mentioned earlier, a lot of you will have seen these because I've had them posted for a long time because they're really important, and I think that they help people understand things. But I want to go through these anyway. I may add a little something to them as we go. I will entertain questions as we go, brief ones. We're not going to get into long discussions of this, but we will get into it during the actual Q&A portion. So just bear in mind that that's how that is gonna go. So, general considerations in the filing of educated returns. Let's look at some of the basic concepts and issues related to filing knowledgeable, accurate, and proper tax instruments. 1, if information returns by a payer, example given, W-2s, 1099s, K-1s, make what are believed to be erroneous allegations of the payment of wages, non-employee compensation, or other revenue purportedly in connection with the conduct of an income taxable activity, a filing intended to be true, complete, and correct would seek to rebut the erroneous allegations and provide what the filer believes to be the correct amounts. This might be done by, for instance, A, attaching sworn statements specifically rebutting the errors on those forms with correct entries to one's federal and or state and local 1040. Examples are Forms 4852 to rebut and replace errant W-2s or 1099-Rs. Everybody understand a 4852 will rebut a 1099-R, but not any other kind of 1099. That's the only kind that it is relevant to. Or photocopies of errant original 1099 miscellaneouses or any other kind of 1099 except the 1099-R with correct information replacing incorrect entries and a sworn statement declaring the instrument to be a rebuttal of an erroneous 1099 known to have been submitted by the listed payer. Important point with that last little section is that to understand that the proper format of a rebuttal to a 1099, or at least the easiest way to end up with a proper format, is to simply make a copy of the bad 1099 and correct the errors on it.
What do you use, whiteout?
Whiteout or whatever, even a scan with, or just a strikeout of the bad information and putting in the correct information, accompanied by using the rebuttal instruments as replacements for the erroneous information returns and the correct information from the rebutting instruments to complete one's 1040. For instance, if one has received erroneous W-2s and has created a rebutting 4852, where a 1040 asks for wages received and says to attach a W-2, one would declare the wage entry from line 7A of the 4852 and attach that form instead of the erroneous W-2, because the 4852 is a substitute for a W-2. So where a W-2 is asked for, a 4852 can always be the thing that is submitted. Instruments rebutting erroneous 1099s other than 1099Rs are attached to the return by themselves, that is not with any, some kind of schedule, unless one really is operating some kind of tax-relevant business or other activity. And one is acknowledging having had some trade or business income, but just a different amount than what was reported on the erroneous 1099.
Oh, I have a question.
Yeah.
They say, you say to include the 4852, so they get the 4852, they get the numbers off the 4852, and then they request from you proof that the numbers on the 4852 are correct. For example, your W-2. When they asked me that, I just sent a copy of the 4852 again, so it's signed, it's proof.
And in addition, you might consider also pointing out to them that the payer who did the withholding that you are reporting sent them a W-2. And if they didn't, they're liable for criminal charges for having failed to do so. And why aren't they asking them to verify the withholding amounts that you are claiming? And pointing out that, really we all know that you actually already have that information. You know perfectly well that that information is correct. You know that I have said it under penalty of perjury that these amounts were withheld, and they have said under penalty of perjury that these amounts were withheld. And you, Mr. IRS agent, have no personal knowledge whatever of the subject. So you don't have any reason to doubt my numbers in the first place. And you certainly have none to doubt what I have said and what the payer has also said. So end of story. And any claim that they have to receive a W-2 from you to prove that the numbers are correct is obviously nonsense. Instruments rebutting erroneous 1099s other than 1099Rs are attached to the return by themselves, that is not with some kind of schedule, unless one really is operating some kind of tax-relevant business or other activity, and one is acknowledging having had some trade or business income, but just a different amount than what was reported on the erroneous 1099. In other words, it is possible to be a self-employed quote-unquote person and get a 1099 that's wrong, not in that it says you had any relevant income, but that the amount could be wrong, and then in that case one would just correct the amount. If one is engaged in no tax relevant activities during the year, there are likely no schedules that are appropriate for one's filing, unless I suppose one has something being carried over from a previous year in which something taxable was done. I don't know how elaborate any of you have ever had in your tax dealings over the years, but sometimes when you've done something that really is taxable, you have some element, some aspect of that phenomenon that can be carried over into another year, either a depreciation or a refund amount that you've asked to carry forward into the next year or whatever. So that's what that's all about. If erroneous forms were included with a filing in which those erroneous forms were rebutted, it would cause a contradiction in entries and make the return invalid and frivolous, since everything included with the return is presumed to be attested to as correct by the filer. Failing to combine all amounts withheld as or for any kind of federal tax as a single figure on the line designated for federal income tax withheld, and are failing to include and claim back any withheld amount while claiming back other amounts is to create an apparent contradiction. For instance, to report 0 wages and claim back the amounts listed as withheld on a W-2 or 4852 as nominal federal income tax, but to not also claim back amounts withheld as Social Security tax and Medicare tax would be to declare oneself to have not received wages as defined at 26 U.S.C. 3401A, but to have received wages as defined at 3121A. Since both designations of wages refer to the same receipts and activities which produce them, with the latter, the 3121A taxes merely being a surtax on a portion of the former, the declarations are contradictory of each other. Does everybody understand that? You can't say, yes, I owed Social Security and Medicare tax, but I didn't owe any normal federal income. You can't say those two things together. They contradict each other.
What do you say if they said that to you? They say, here's your FICA back, but Social Security and Medicare.
Well, that's usually not, well, the FICA is Social Security and Medicare.
Sorry, okay.
Yeah, okay. You say to them, and how can that be, Mr. IRS agent? You've agreed that I didn't have any wages. You gave me back all my Chapter 24 withholdings. That's an agreement that none was owed because I had no wages. In fact, you probably, very likely, said in black and white you had no taxable income. Like on that example that I had posted earlier, they said no taxable income. And you're saying you get to keep the FICA taxes on, that only apply to income anyway, that's obviously nonsense. And the law says you have to return everything that's an overpayment. So you got no ground to stand on, Mr. IRS agent. That's what you say, essentially.
I mean, is there a way to press it so that they follow through on it, or do you just keep hitting the ball back over the net until they...
You keep hitting the ball back over the net until you go to court. I mean, until, it is an unfortunate reality that the myth about FICA just not ever being refundable, that one developed decades ago. I don't know exactly when, probably in the 40s or something like that. This myth that, well, yeah, some people, you get a refund of taxes, but nobody could ever get a refund of Social Security and Medicare. That was just a myth that, got ingrained into the tax professional community, and the IRS just, glommed onto that in a big way. And they know that lots of people believe that. Lots of people believe that. Anybody that's not CTC educated and has not been watching for the last 15 years perhaps believes that, because it's been being said for decades.
It seems pretty clear by looking at the two places where Medicare and Social Security are declared that they are a tax late on income.
Absolutely, it says it plainly. It says it plainly, but there's just a reality that even IRS literature has been posted or published that says that there's no way of refunding these amounts. There's no way of getting these back. It's nonsense. It's absolute nonsense. It's nonsense on stilts. They've given it back hundreds of thousands of times now, but they still, play on this notion. And lately, while we're now in the then they fight you mode, we've seen this increase. This is, it hasn't happened, but a relatively, paltry number of times, but it's, growing, of checks consisting of just the Chapter 24 stuff being issued, and the FICA, they just act like they can keep the FICA. Like it's just, just a fee for service. Yeah, it's whatever the various approaches are. But it's just that. It's just an effort to intimidate. I think largely what it really is sort of like a, hey, look, all right, we're going to give you back this amount. Here's your check. It's nice and fat, and it's more than you've ever seen back from from us before in your life. So just go away. Just take this, be happy. Consider yourself to have won, and go away. Stop, fighting. We're going to keep this, and everybody's going to be happy, right? That's kind of how it is. It really is. It's that level of just, raw, corrupt nonsense.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Okay, in there you're saying that because you're asking for all your income back, but you're not asking for Social Security and Medicare tax, it creates a contradiction. Do I understand that right?
Yeah.
Okay. I'm one of those, excuse me for being weird, but I actually have no problem with Social Security and Medicare tax.
That's fine.
Even though the tax is supposed to be voluntary, that we've heard.
That's fine. Then give it to them.
Yeah.
No, I'm saying give it to them.
And so
give it to them as a gift. If that's how you feel. And I've heard from a number of people who say, my mom's on Social Security. I'm okay with that. Whatever. That's fine. Write them a check. They will take it. There's a mechanism for giving money to the government.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Don't do it by contradicting your filing. If you say you're entitled to keep this part of the money, then you're saying that you had the wages that tax applies to. It's just that simple. The fact that you don't want it to say that doesn't mean anything. If you send in the paperwork showing it that way, you're saying this tax was right. This tax was correct. You guys having this tax was correct. And that contradicts the claim that the other part was incorrect. It's just,
Okay, I see what you're saying.
Okay. Same contradiction would arise if one listed anything as excess Social Security and Tier 1 RRTA tax withheld. It's a mistake that a number of people have made over the years while denying having received any 3121A wages. One can only have excess Social Security tax withheld if one has had Social Security tax properly withheld up to the amount at which anything further becomes excess. You can't have it, you can't be excess if you didn't owe it in the first place. Okay, 2, A return is not an appropriate document for making legal arguments of any kind. To include a cover letter describing what has been seen in the return, such as that erroneous information returns have been rebutted with instruments completed and attached for that purpose, does no great harm, though it risks making the filer appear a bit like a supplicant and uncertain, and therefore possibly vulnerable to browbeating. Do y'all understand that point? If you're explaining it, which, you know, I like the explanations, and I have posted at people's explanatory cover letters or whatever with great pleasure sometimes, because it makes, you know, there was a time early on in CTC's history where it was necessary to show people things like that, to say there was no way that this was a mistake. I mean, when the guy that, you know, first got the return opened the envelope, the first thing he saw was something that said, I'm not a federal employee, I didn't earn wages, I had a bunch of money withheld in error, I want it all back, Social Security included, you know, it's like, there's no mistaking it, right? This was not an error. And so those early on, those letters were kind of useful, but for purposes of, you know, illustration. But it does, you know, raise the question, why are you saying this? I mean, you know, you're saying that's what your return says, right? You think you have to justify it? Because it has the tinge of justification. It has the hint of that. It isn't meant to be that necessarily, but it has a hint of, you know, it's just shy of arguing the law on your return and saying, and you've got to give it back to me because, you know, here's what the law says and all that, which is kind of a way of saying, you know, you're not really sure that, you know, that what you're saying, because you ought to know that they know what the law says. They know what they have to do. And, you know, you just ask for your stuff and they give it to you. It's just like you don't explain to the guy at the Sears counter when you're taking a product back for a refund and you want your money back, you don't have to, you know, explain to him the details of why it is he's obliged to refund you money and, you know, all that stuff. It's understood, right? Understand it, you know, be confident with it. But a filing is not the place to be making assertions about whether one is or isn't an employee, arguments about the nature of the tax, assertions that rebutted information returns contain bad payer data, and so forth. Because you don't need to say that. All you need to do is give numbers. The only thing that a return is for is your numbers. They are to provide your numbers. This is, they said when, you know, on the line that, you know, wages paid, they said, you know, 50,000. Wages received, what you're saying is, you know, whatever it is, you know, 0 it might be. That's it. That's all that's needed. That is all that's needed. Your use of the form dictates the context in which that data exists. And by saying 0, when they said 50,000, you're saying that theirs was bad payer data. You don't have to use the expression.
Refer to the 4852 attached.
Yeah. A return is just a statement of the amounts one knows and believes to be true, complete, and correct in regard to each item inquired about on the 1040, properly understood as to its statutory meaning. It is neither a soapbox nor a legal brief. Further, some kind of arguments can actually invite a frivolous assertion. Someone here earlier made reference to the idea of, you know, cluttering a return up with constitutional arguments and, you know, what have you and all that. That's what in the Senate hearings when 6702 was being added to the law in 1982. That was what they referred to, was returns that, you know, have constitutional arguments and so forth on them in an effort to justify, you know, why people are saying something contrary to what the IRS wants to see on a return. And you know, it's not the place for it. The IRS is not a legal department. They don't have anything to do with legal arguments in the first place. There is an associated office, the Office of Chief Counsel, that does legal stuff for them, and there are courts and so forth. They're not one. They're not made up of lawyers, not at all. It's just an accountancy operation. It's an accountancy and a collections agency. That's all it is. You don't argue the law with these people. That's not their job, and that's not the right place for you to do it. Amounts improperly or erroneously collected, withheld, paid in, what have you, can only be claimed for refund looking back 3 years. On the other hand, rebuttals/corrections of erroneous assertions for their own sake, or as a response to collections efforts based on erroneous information returns, have no look-back limit. Learn more about both issues at that web address. If anybody's interested in the subject of the statute of limitations and how this works, if anyone is getting harassed with collections activities over amounts based on bad payer data or bad erroneous allegations from many years in the past, that's where you find out the how that works. Okay. Returns varying from or attempting to supplement the principles and points listed here and or reflecting notions not presented in CTC or on this site on Lost Horizons, exclusive of the forum pages, such as adding UCC references to jurats or otherwise marking up or adding to a return, invite problems. I believe such variations are sometimes seen as reflecting an uncertainty and therefore an insincerity about one's filing, which can create a pretext for treating a return as frivolous and invalid. They also make one appear to be a soft target for harassment, ill-equipped to stand one's ground and deal competently with pushback, which is therefore more likely to be attempted. That all is fairly self-evident, right? You clutter your stuff up with extraneous stuff, it's simply a mistake on several different grounds. All right, number 5, just a reference to the frequently asked questions pages to remind people that this stuff, lots and lots, there's lots more on the FAQ pages, so you should use them. And the sitemap. For those new to filing educated returns and claims, the bulletin board has well over 1,000 victories posted, many, many, many of which include not just the check or notice or transcript, but also the entire filing that was involved in the case. So a very important resource. Educated Filers Checklist. So you've done your careful study of the book, you've poured over the FAQs, the legal notes and special topic postings. Information or returns erroneously characterizing payments made to you as being tax relevant have arrived, or you've got money that was improperly paid in or withheld to reclaim, or both. You're getting ready to file that first educated tax return. And despite the best preparation, even someone with a solid grasp of the whole picture can still find his debut educated filing to be an anxious and drawn-out chore, if only for the heightened focus on getting everything right. And perversely, anxiety can lead to mistakes. So we'll go through a little checklist that will address a lot of the issues. For people rebutting W-2s, here are the questions for you to ask yourself. Did I scrupulously verify and transcribe whatever is correct on each W-2 received to a corresponding spot on a Form 4852? And did I report what I believe to be correct in every place on the Form 4852 that corresponds to any incorrect entry on the W-2? 2, for federal filings, did I add up all amounts withheld and sent to the feds as taxes on income, whether under the names of federal income tax, Social Security tax, or Medicare tax, and include them on the line of the 1040 for reporting the amount of federal income tax withheld? For state filings, did I report the amount withheld as tax and sent to my state on the line of my state return for reporting the amount of income tax withheld? Did I answer the questions on the Forms 4852 succinctly, factually, and without arguments? Did I carefully not attach the W-2s being rebutted to my filing, but carefully attach the Forms 4852 as substitutes for those at least partially erroneous W-2s? For 1099-R rebutting filers, did I scrupulously verify and transcribe whatever is correct on each 1099-R received to a corresponding spot on a Form 4852? And did I report what I believe to be correct in every place on the Form 4852 that corresponds to any incorrect entry on the 1099-R? For feds, did I add up all amounts withheld and sent to the feds as taxes on income? Basically, this is the same question as the last time around. Same thing for the state. Same thing, same thing. Okay, all just the same as with a W-2. For other kinds of 1099 rebutting filers, did I create a rebuttal instrument for each erroneous 1099 received by, for example, photocopying the received original, striking or whiting out all erroneous assertions, and replacing them with correct information with a plain and succinct signed declaration on the same page that the instrument is a rebuttal of an erroneous allegation known to have been made by the entity listed as payer, and that all information thereon is, to the best of your knowledge and belief and under penalties of perjury, true, correct, and complete. That last bit is really important. There was a period of time that the IRS tried to argue or assert that when people sent in 1099 rebuttals, that they were trying to pretend that they were the original 1099 creator who had corrected their own 1099, and that these people were just sending in what that creator had sent them as a corrected 1099. Very important to make the point, to make clearly the statement this is to rebut somebody else's work. For K1 rebutting filers, did I create a rebuttal instrument for each erroneous K1 received by? You know what, this is basically the same thing because K1s are rebutted in exactly the same way. Okay, for filers who own the businesses that pay them, did I ensure that any erroneous prior business filings for the relevant year concerning things being addressed on or relevant to my personal return, such as W-2s or business returns treating my business as a federal corporation, for instance, have been corrected? Did I ensure that any erroneous filings about others made by my business have been corrected? You can't be claiming that you are properly withholding from a workforce, for instance, and yet you're not engaged in the kind of activity for which taxes are relevant. You can't, in other words, claim that you want all your money back, everything refunded to you, while you're withholding from other people. It's a contradiction. For former tax honesty community filers, did I refrain from quirky zip code bracketing or other irrelevant and sometimes balk or harassment inviting indications that I'm really just a tax honesty wanderer trying things out without firm knowledge, confidence, and intent? Did I include the Social Security number assigned to my account with the tax agency so as to make it easy to process my return? You don't have to put a Social Security number on a tax return. There's no requirement that you do it. But it'll slow down processing your return. And there's no reason not to put it on there. That's the same way they keep track of you as your local public library keeps track of you with your library card number. It doesn't have any more meaning than that. Did I sign the jurat without compromising it in any way? That is, without any strikeouts or additions that compromise its sincerity. You all know what the jurat is, right? That's the attestation under penalty of perjury at the bottom of a tax return. And without any notations or other harassment inviting indications that I'm really just a tax honesty wanderer trying things out without firm knowledge and confidence, such as expressions of a fear that one's rights are somehow compromised by signing a tax return and need to be explicitly reserved against that danger. You can't compromise the sincerity of the perjury statement at the end of a return and have that return be valid. It's not valid unless it is made without compromise in that regard. Did I carefully ensure that every conclusion reflected in the filing is squarely grounded in what is presented in CTC and not tainted in any way with notions not found in CTC? That is the one way of guaranteeing that you will not cross over into a line of frivolity. For all filers, did I attach instruments rebutting any and all erroneous information return allegations known to have been made concerning payments made to me and supporting the entries on my 1040? Did I only attach things to my return that I believe to be true, complete, and correct, and nothing which contradicts anything else attached? Do I have an entry in every field related to what I mean to be saying by way of my return? That is, did I put a number, whether zero or otherwise, in every spot intended for a filer's statements as to income, wages, if wage receipts have been alleged by anyone, adjusted gross income, etc.? Leaving such a field empty is not a legally functional statement as to how much of a thing one had, did, or received. Is everybody clear about that one? I have seen people who are not clear about that and who imagine that by saying nothing, it's the same thing as saying zero. It is not the same thing. A tax return is asking for your statement of how much income you received, or how much wages you received, or how much of several things you did received. You have to say a number. Did I refrain from making any kind of legal or other arguments anywhere within or as part of the filing, and confine myself to filling in relevant blanks with fact entries? Kind of what we were just talking about in a way. Did I recognize that when Pete posts something someone else filed, it is not an endorsement of what is posted? This is a really important one to me because a lot of people, make this mistake. Such posts, which are victories, arguments, whatever, are done to illustrate a principle, as in Mr. Smith rebutted that allegation, or maybe filed a return rebutting that allegation, or whatever, and here is what happened next. It is the what and the why that is being illustrated and endorsed. Sometimes people do the right and necessary thing, but only barely, while also including unnecessary and sometimes dangerously close to self-defeating stuff. It is unwise to think that because Mr. Smith included some argument in his return cover letter and ended up with a refund, that that argument is necessary or wise or had anything to do with the outcome of the event. Okay, Pete, as a matter of ethics, posts everything a victor or virtuous legal contestant filed if I post anything at all. I don't pick and choose and say, well, I think this was really important, so this I'm going to put up, but I'm going to leave out this other stuff that this guy that also was included in that filing, but that I think is not important or would be a problem. I can't really do that. It seems wrong to me to do that. My whole gig is forthrightness. That's what it's all about. So I post everything. If I'm going to post anything that anyone did, I post everything that they did, with the expectation and hope that people will realize I'm not posting stuff meaning this is what you should do. I'm posting it to show what happened. That's it. And so I always tell people, if you're going to look at examples on the victories pages, for instance, look at a dozen of them and see what is the common thing that got done by all of those people. That's the way to determine. If you're looking for answers to questions about, for guidance by examples, that's how you need to do it. Look at a bunch of them and see what the common things are that got done. Because of any given dozen, you'll see some where there wasn't anything said at all except 0, 0, 10,000, 0, that's it. And they got their check. And when you see that, then you look at another one where the guy put in, 2 pages of stuff about, explaining his filing, and he got his check too. Well, okay, does that mean you need to do the 2 pages of extra stuff on there? A problem that people have in a lot of cases is they look at whatever the most recent victory was and think, oh, that's what I got to do now because, that's what just worked. It's all the same. It's all the same. The victory that happened in 2003 is the same as the victory that happened in 2018. Don't be misled. Because a lot of the stuff that people attach to their filings, a lot of the arguments that they make, a lot of the stuff that they end up subsequently, adding in when they're writing back and forth, about frivolous stuff and all that, a lot of it is complete nonsense. Complete nonsense. So I post everything that somebody files, if I post anything at all. But the only thing that I endorse are what I have written myself or posted of my own filings. Similarly, it's unwise to imagine that even when someone says in something that ends up posted on losthorizons.com that he or she got it from something I posted, that this is true. Or that if more or less true, that what was drawn on was accurately deployed or transcribed. The resort has to be made to whatever I've posted directly in order to ensure accuracy. I added that line in there not all that long ago because I found a raft of people having made copies of something that a really good guy with a long history, 10-year history of nonstop victories from the IRS, and some really good ones. But he ended up with a situation where he was briefly facing a garnishment from a company that he worked for in response to an IRS thing, which he ended up beating. And he defeated the garnishment as well. And he did it by making use of a thing I have posted on the site, which is now available only on restricted pages, which are only available, by the way, to people who post videos. Share those video testimonials that we talked about earlier, because I really want you people to do those things. They mean a great deal, and people don't do them, and I can't abide that. I can't do this myself, and I can't be the only face, above the trench wall here. Everybody else has to do it too. So I now have restricted pages with some of the higher grade, more critical legal resources posted, and one of them stops garnishments, and it just stops them dead, and it's been 100% effective where it's been done. But this guy had access to this back before I had created the restricted pages, and he made use of it, and he had shared a bunch of stuff with me, and I posted his stuff, and I didn't, unfortunately, with fly-speck care, go over everything that he had said in what was actually a pretty good bulk of stuff that he had done, writing back and forth to the IRS at one point, and when he did the thing about to deal with the garnishment, he had made a couple of mistakes in transcribing the stuff that he was reading off my, off my site, my own work, and incorporated that into his stuff, and then it ended up getting posted on the site. And I'll take responsibility for that because, I could have fly-specced it. I didn't think I had to, and so I overlooked, what really was just a couple of lines, a couple of words, in fact, in a couple of sentences in 10 pages of, dense text. My bad, but unfortunately, a number of people, at least a half dozen that I know of, got a hold of that material and just copied it and used it themselves. And so they, copied this stuff with these couple of errors in it and sent it out, for their own purposes. And it's just a mistake. I mean, what they needed to do was go to the original source of the material and get it from that, rather than getting what they thought was somebody else's having gotten it from that. It's just like it's the game of post office, where you say something to somebody else and then they say it to the next person and they say it, and by the time it gets to the end, it is completely garbled. I mean, it just doesn't have anything like the same words that started out, because that happens. People make those mistakes. So I've got to be careful about that. So, did I make and save paper copies or high-quality scans of every page of the signed and dated filing? Please, people, do this. There's this tendency now to do everything online. The bad guys love for you to do stuff online. You don't have control over what's online. You can't strike material on online forms and replace it with what's correct. You just can't. There's no way of doing it. You don't have a record that is as solid and reliable as a paper record. You don't have dates showing up on the stuff when you did stuff. It matters. Just use paper stuff. Don't get sucked into the ease thing. It is easier to do forms online, but it's a sucker's game. You're being pulled into something that is not good. Did I have my filing comprehensively witnessed? Does everybody know about comprehensive witnessing? I mean, it's in CTC, so everyone ought to know about it. Comprehensive witnessing is a way of ensuring that there is an impartial third party who can testify, if necessary, that your return got sent to the agency, because they still sometimes deny having received a return. They still do. It's astonishing to me that happens, but it does. They'll simply say, "Oh, we never got that filing," smirk. And the way to ensure that you can rebut that, if need be, is comprehensive witnessing. Comprehensive witnessing, when I say comprehensive, what that means is you have a witness, not a member of your family preferably, but somebody who is not, somebody who's impartial, initial the pages of your filing, after which you make copies of those initialed pages. So, you've done everything you're going to do on them, signature and all. And then you have somebody initial them, XX, page 1 out of 12, initial, page 2 out of 12, whatever. Make copies of those so you have the record. And that person then puts those in the envelope. That person then goes along with you to the post office with the envelope. They have the envelope. That person hands the envelope to the clerk at the post office. That person then can testify, I know that document, and yes, that document, yep, those are my initials on that document, and that document got mailed to the IRS with this certification number, certified mailing number, whatever, on this date. That's the only way you can be 100% sure that if push comes to shove, you can prove that you mailed a return. Because otherwise you just simply can't.
And to ultimately prove that is in federal court.
Yeah, if it comes to that.
Yeah,
I mean, the odds of it coming to that are, very, very small.
Plus, there was also subsequent, and if you're going back and forth based on the return, if they say, well, we got it, here's some, we're going this way with it. I mean, would they still be able to say we? No.
Once it shows up on a transcript or you've gotten a correspondence or whatever, where it's like, no, then you're done with that question. But initially, you may have to, you may have the issue come up. Yeah, Richard.
Peter, are you suggesting that the certified mail would be second best or not preferred at all? Or?
No, certified mail is very important because that's the way of getting a green card back, indicating that the agency received the thing, and that's very important.
But it doesn't prove what was in it.
It doesn't prove that there was anything in the envelope. They might have gotten a blank envelope, and they have said that before. They have said, we got it, but there wasn't anything in it.
They lied and actually said that?
Well, I'm presuming they lied. I mean, but you know, the only way to prove that they didn't lie is to have had that comprehensively witnessed. So somebody can say, "Hey, I have nothing to gain here, but I was asked to witness this procedure, and I did. And I put the thing in the envelope, and I gave the envelope to the clerk. So unless the clerk took it out and destroyed it, you know, and I don't think anyone's alleging any tampering with the envelope."
Is there a customary fee or tip that you would give that person?
Buy him a beer.
Is that?
Buy him a beer. No, here's the customary tip or the fee that you pay. You do his. You witness his when he does his educated return. Okay. Did I generously do my best to ensure that my family members, friends, and acquaintances know how or know why and how to file CTCA educated returns themselves? That's the most important part of the whole thing. And finally, when you have won them, share your victories. That's a good chunk of your part of the bargain in exchange for my efforts teaching you how to be free and how to keep or regain control of a huge portion of your wealth. Find formatting guidance at that address. Really, people, share your victories. Don't wait. When you have one, send it in right away. Don't wait. Don't wait for the federal one to come in. You know, we were talking about that. You know, you get the state victory, send the state victory. You get the federal victory, send the federal victory. Don't wait for a big combination of things. It may take years before that stuff sorts out. Sometimes they do. It's unfortunate, but sometimes that's the way it is. Waiting is a bad thing. Waiting is a way of that's keeping the bushel over your candle. It's not a good thing to do. A few words about wise practices. The subtitle there says it. You're playing in the big leagues. You got to have big league tools, and this is not complicated stuff. Have a scanner. Does everybody have a scanner? Is there anybody that doesn't have a scanner? Okay, get a scanner. Scanners are cheap. No, a phone is not a scanner. A phone, if something that takes pictures, is not a scanner. I can't post stuff from a picture. I mean, it's crappy. It's nasty to look at, hard to manipulate. It's a bad way to go, and you can't do anything with it if you need to provide a copy of something that you've done. You can't use a photograph of it to make that copy and send it in to have an ongoing debate or argument, which you may have. You know, if you have to send anything into the agency, the only object of doing it is to get it into the record so that if it comes down to where there's a legal contest later on at some point, you can have them produce it as evidence. You can compel them to produce it. Yes, that you sent this in, and here's what it says. You don't want that to be a photograph of something that you sent. You want it to be a copy of what you sent. So,
recommend a good scanner, Pete.
Epson makes excellent scanners. HP makes excellent scanners. You can get a scanning printer for $40 with ink. It'll give you $70. You'll get $70 worth of ink that'll come with the package. It's easy. Makes a big difference to have scans. Have a printer along with that scanner. Usually, if you get a scanner, it comes with a printer underneath it. I mean, that's just the way they're made. Do your filings and correspondences on your computer and save them on your hard drive, not in the cloud. You want to own these documents yourself. Print and mail anything you are sending to anyone related to the tax rather than using fill-in-the-field online forms, which I talked about a little while ago. Keep hard copies or scans of hard copies of everything you send anywhere, scanned after signing and dating. And everything you receive. Dating is really important. You know, a lot of people, especially the ones that do fill in the field online forms, they end up sending, even if they're sharing a victory, they end up sending me a return that has no dates on it because those things don't show up on those forms. It makes a world of difference to know when something got done. It makes a difference if you're in any kind of a legal contest, when something happened is critical. Absolutely critical. So you have to have the dates on stuff. So just, print the forms, sign them, just do stuff on paper is the substance of this whole thing. Do it on paper. Make a file folder for every filing and keep everything related to it in that folder. Be organized and be scrupulous. One thing that'll happen, people get started making educated filings and And as time, and I don't think this is necessary, and as time goes by, if they end up with any kind of resistance, you start accumulating large amounts of paperwork. I mean, you accumulate lots of stuff that they send you, lots of stuff that you send out, and if you're not keeping it organized to begin with, you discover later on, oh man, you know, I need to know when everything happened and you know what has happened, and that means I got to dig through, you know, this huge filing cabinet worth of stuff. Whereas you could have been keeping it all in a file folder, all, you know, to begin with from this, you know, the word go. Do it that way. Plan for it. Yeah, Steve.
One tip I bought $5.99 the little receive stamp, right?
Yeah.
Ink your paper and sign it, you know, or date it when you
Yeah.
got the stuff back. Simple but
Yep.
relevant.
Yep, absolutely. Dates are really important. Okay, I think this is about towards the end here. What qualifies as taxable privileges? Now, I'm going to read through this roughly. Just let me get through the whole thing before any questions, because they may end up getting answered in the course of it. To answer the question of what qualifies as taxable privilege, really all that is needed is to ask another question. What gainful things can only be done because of the existence of Uncle Sam? It's really that simple. This question doesn't refer to any vague, I can only get paid for what I do because Uncle Sam guards the nation, or because Uncle Sam prints currency, or because he builds roads, or enforces copyrights, or any of those things. Those are all things that are mandated as constitutional responsibilities. Those are you having those things get done are not privileges to you. That's their mandated obligation, not privileges in any sense at all. Nor does it refer to getting paid for doing things in which Uncle Sam is peripherally involved through some kind of licensure scheme. License fees are themselves taxes, and paying those taxes doesn't enable other taxes. As in, I have a license from the government to do this thing, therefore I only do it with the government's permission, and everything I make from doing it is income. This is not true. Although, some things done in connection with having a federal license are income taxable on their own merits. It's just not true of all things for which you can get a license. You can have a government fishing license, but this doesn't mean that every time you put a hook in the water, it is being done in a government lake. So be clear about that. Nor does it refer to having Uncle Sam's permission to be in the country, or to be in the country working or making money, or anything like that. The issue is never one of status. It is always one of what gets done, not who does it. Many of you have encountered people who are big on the citizenship thing. That is the notion that you know, being a United States citizen is, or being an American citizen, or being in the country is a privilege, and therefore just, you know, anything that is made, any money that's made by anybody enjoying any of those status features qualifies as income. It doesn't. Instead, what only because of the existence of Uncle Sam means is what literally can be done only because of the existence of Uncle Sam, in the same sense in which some things can only be done because of the existence of your Uncle Ernie. For instance, you can only work for Uncle Ernie because Uncle Ernie exists. You could do the same work for someone else, but working for Uncle Ernie relies on the existence of Uncle Ernie. Likewise, you can only invest in Uncle Ernie's business ventures because Uncle Ernie is out there creating them. You can only mine ore or harvest timber from Uncle Ernie's land because Uncle Ernie exists to own it. It is only a very specialized category of things that qualify for this taxable class. Whether the interstate highway system exists or not, any trucker can still deliver goods from point A to point B in his long-haul truck. It might be a longer or bumpier ride had the super slab never been built, but making those deliveries, unless delivered from or to the federal government itself, doesn't require the existence of the federal government in order to be possible. The trucker might need to pay a license fee and register with the DOT in order to travel on government roads, but traveling on government roads isn't any more the gainful activity by which a valid tax can arise on the productive act of delivering the goods than is anyone's use of government-built roads to commute to her factory or office. Likewise, someone being paid by the feds for services provided to someone else, such as a doctor being paid by Medicaid for services provided to another citizen, isn't doing anything that can only be done due to the existence of the government, although the recipient of the services is. You understand that point? The person who's getting the Medicaid paid by the government, they're getting a benefit. They're getting a privilege, because they can't get that except because Uncle Sam is there to do it. But the guy who provided the services and who's getting paid for providing those services, he's not doing something that he can only do because Uncle Sam is there. Is that clear to everybody? Okay. Being paid isn't itself a taxable event. It is doing something federally privileged that is taxable. Being paid for it simply provides a metric by which can be determined the amount of the taxable thing done. Here's the long and the short of it. Anything you could do, even if the federal government had never been created by the Articles of Confederation, fix your neighbor's pipes, sell your paintings, build and operate a hospital or a bank or a factory, isn't a taxable exercise of privilege. Anything that relies on the existence of the federal government, like fixing federal pipes, selling paintings to HUD, or building and operating a hospital, bank, or factory on a U.S. Army base, might be a taxable exercise of privilege. And I say might be because not everything that could be taxable is taxed. Congress has complete latitude within the universe of federally privileged things. And let's not forget things like getting welfare from the federal government, whether Social Security benefits or unemployment compensation or whatever. Administering a federal instrumentality, like being a paid officer of a Federal Reserve Bank or of a national railroad, a railroading operation qualifies also. So again, pretty simple, really, as I'm sure everyone can now see. Now, Dana, you had a question about one of those items?
Can we go back to your trucking story?
Sure.
So a lot of truckers are independent contractors.
Right.
So there's going to be a company that's contracting a bunch of truckers to pick stuff up and drop it off. And if the trucker picks stuff up and drops it off at a federal building, they're sort of one removed from.
And they are one removed, aren't they?
Sure.
Sure. So, you know, that's working. It's like, you know, being a public school teacher. A lot of public schools get grants from the federal government, but that doesn't make the people who work for the school district into federal privilege recipients. They're getting paid by the people who got the grant. They're not getting the grant themselves. Effectively, they're not getting the grant at all in any sense whatsoever. They're just getting paid. So it's the same example as the Medicaid provider that we talked about earlier, actually. They're not the beneficiary. The beneficiary is the school district or the trucking company. The trucker himself or the school teacher, they're not the beneficiary. Okay, we're going to take another break, and then we're going to go to Q&As.